Hi, I'm Ashley, and today I'm going to be painting in my sketchbook. And this is just a plant that actually somebody at work gave me a cutting up. So it's a succulent, and its informal name is called the Wandering Jew. So these leaves are a purple and green mix, and they're very distinct and very vibrant. Since seeing the plant and having it grow in my yard, I've been wanting to paint these leaves. So I'm just messing around in my sketchbook, kind of playing with the different techniques. And so join me and let's go ahead and flow into it.
I'm starting by mixing up a purple to loosely match the color of the leaves of this plant. And so I'm using permanent rose and cobalt blue to mix up this color. And I do have a reference photo. I'm going to use it loosely, but not precisely. Now I am starting with a fairly dark value of this color, which is not really the traditional approach to watercolor. You can see as I lay it down, I do have a lot of water in there. It's still nice and juicy, and there is some transparency, but it isn't really a very light layer, a light value. But I'm okay with breaking the rules. That's kind of the point of art, right? You don't have to follow all the rules. They're there as a guideline. And you can see, again, I am using a lot of water to make it nice and juicy because I want to try to make sure this paint stays fairly wet so that I can use wet on wet for these leaves to get that variegated color. Now to create the shape of these leaves, I'm using basically a pressure stroke. So I do have a large brush here. I think it's a size 16 round, but you can see that even so, it's not big enough to create the width of these leaves. So most of the leaves are 2 strokes, but I'm starting with light pressure and then pressing down to the belly, that big fat part of the brush, and then lifting off. Sometimes I'm lifting off slowly to create more of a pointed tapered end. And then other times I'm lifting off quickly, and that creates that blunt flat end to the leaves. So on the leaves that I want them to look curved down more, I leave a more blunt end. And then the leaves that you're seeing more the whole thing, where it comes off the stem and everything, I am coming more to a point. Now again, I am using a reference photo here, so I'm getting the placement of the leaves very loosely based on the reference photo. I'm not putting all of the leaves in there, but I'm using it to decide kind of where these little clusters of leaves are gonna go. Later I add in some more leaves, but these 3 clusters are the main focal point of the piece. And I decided to go with 3 clusters because it just looked nice and balanced. And then the actual clusters themselves, I have 4 on the first 2. I have 5 here. So the actual number of leaves in each cluster doesn't matter. Again, I add in some more leaves later, but getting the 3 clusters makes it look nice and balanced. And then for that first layer, you can see it's all basically, not exactly, but it's basically one value. I don't worry about trying to figure out which leaves are on top, which are on bottom. I just put shapes down, and then with the next layer, I start to build up that depth and create the layers of leaves. So here I mixed up a green. My greens are gonna be a variety of mixtures. I don't have one certain formula. So this one is lemon yellow and ultramarine, which is a little bit more of a muted green color. And I use that to tap in. Again, these leaves are still wet on the page, so I am just tapping the color and then it bleeds out naturally. And that creates that variegation without having to work at it and make it look purposeful. So it creates that natural look. On the edges of the leaves, because I'm going outside the edge, I'm almost outlining it. The outside edge is going to be a nice hard edge, and then the inside edge is going to bleed out and kind of diffuse out into the pink and create that soft transition. And now it is kind of a pinky purple and then green. Those 2 colors mix to make brown. So I want to make sure that I'm not quote unquote overworking the petals, because then it'll just blend and make brown. So I'm tapping, I'm not blending with my brush. And then Again, I want variety, so in some of these areas I'm adding more yellow to the mixture, in other areas I'm adding more blue to the mixture, and that just creates interest, basically. Is that accurate to the petals? Not exactly, but there definitely is a variety of colors in each, I call them petals. They're not petals, it's not a flower, leaves. There is variety in these leaves in the plant of different shades of pinks, purples, blues, greens. And so by just throwing in different colors, it creates that again naturally and just creates that interest. Also, some of the leaves are going to be more green heavy and some are going to be more pink heavy. So you'll see that for the most part, I'm doing the same thing. I'm outlining and then putting green up the middle, but some of them I'm leaving more of the purple showing, and in some I'm adding a lot more green to it. And again, that just creates more interest. If you really study these leaves on the plant, it's amazing how much variety there is in these plants. It's really cool. So I do go ahead and add in some stems here. So I mixed yellow ochre with ultramarine, and that creates a really neutral green that's almost brown. And then I'm adding these stems just to create some structure. It gives my brain an idea of where all the leaves are coming back to, so that I don't have just a random leaf floating and pointing the wrong direction. Now, in reality, you'll see as we get down farther in this painting, all of these stems pretty much end up covered. You don't see them, but it did kind of ground my brain and again, give it that point to bring all the leaves back to. I do kind of like the stems though, and if I were to repaint this, I might have stopped and not added a bunch more leaves or anything else to it. I might have just left it at these 3 clusters with the stems because it looks kind of cool. And so that's something to think about, is that the choices that we make, they aren't right or wrong. I could have stopped here and it could have been quote unquote right. It could have looked good. It could have looked correct. I don't stop here. I keep going and it also looks correct. So you get to play with it and choose, because there's not rights and wrongs. Now for this little cluster of leaves, they had dried. So I went ahead and added some clean water to those top 2 leaves so that I could get the blends and the wet on wet. So if it dries completely, you can add a thin light amount of clean water to re-wet it and get those wet on wet bleeds. And that's what I did here. So for those first 2 leaves, I did that. And here again, I am kind of thinking about the layering. So on that first leaf, it goes under that bright leaf that I added more yellow to. And so I painted basically around that leaf. And then the second leaf is on top of that. So you can see that that edge goes over, that green goes over that other leaf. So here's where I'm starting to actually think about the layers of the leaves and painting around when I need to. For this third leaf, I decided to try wet on dry to see how it looked. And so I outlined the leaf in the green, and then I add just a little bit of the purple down the center to make it darker, and then add some green to that just to see what it would look like. And then I didn't like it. It looked weird. So I added some water, very minimal amount of water, to try to let those edges bleed out. And then I still didn't like it. So then I lifted up that color by wiping my brush on a towel and then dragging and then wiping on a towel to lift that color off. And then I just added some pinks back in basically to even out that leaf again. And I did make it a little bit darker than what it was initially. I added some of those pinks to the edges. But I didn't like what it looked like wet on dry. And so that's something that you can do with watercolor. In the moment, it's actually very forgiving, because as long as it's still wet, you can mess with it. If you wait for it to dry and then try to correct things, it can work, but sometimes it can damage the paper and things. So it's not forgiving in that way, and it's not forgiving in the way of oils and acrylics where you can cover mistakes. But if it's still wet, you can mess with it and work with it and change it. So you can see on this leaf, I'm like still going on this, and I still decide that I don't like it. So I just lift up the color basically, and it looks fine once I do that. And then I leave that section and go to a completely different section, because before I work on that anymore, I want to let it dry, and then I'll wet it to make sure it's evenly wet and go from there. But at this point, with uneven drying times and everything, I don't want to keep working there, and I don't want to work right next to it because then it'll bleed in funny. So I move sections, wet this next leaf, and go in wet on wet. So I learned from that last one that I didn't like the wet on dry thing. So I decide to wet the leaf, go in wet on wet. And here I shifted my green. So instead of ultramarine blue, I'm using cobalt blue and lemon yellow. And this creates a bit more of a vibrant color. So in my brain, this section of leaves is newer. And if you look at this plant, as the leaves age, they start to get a little bit more muted color, a little bit faded, and well, not faded, faded's not the right word, but the vibrancy fades out. So they're still dark, but they actually get like darker and more muted. So these ones I decided to make a little bit brighter and more vivid using the cobalt blue instead of the ultramarine blue. And then I add kind of more yellows to it, again, to pull up that new, bright, vibrant green color. So again, using the same techniques though, wet on wet, outlining, layering. Now for this leaf here, I decided that it was gonna be like a closed leaf, not open and like unfurled yet. I don't know what to call it. It's not a bud because it's not a flower, but it's a closed leaf. So I wanted to make it look like it was like curled in on itself. So it's a little bit darker green, and then just the shape I'm drawing in with the tip of the brush. So again, using a round brush, it's very versatile. You can get the big broad strokes using the pressure strokes, but because it comes to a nice point, you can use the tip of the brush to draw in shapes and get those kind of smaller details. So that's what I did. And then I continue working, again, adding clean water to the leaf so that I can get the wet on wet bleeds with the greens. And on this petal leaf, I decided to go a little bit more pink heavy, so I don't add as much of the green. You can see like on the one side, I added yellow, and then I added blue to my brush. I'm adding blue, and I'm letting it mix on the page so that it gets some different variety within the same leaf. And you can see also, here's a good example. You don't want to do really any straight lines when you're painting leaves or flowers, because then they'll just look flat, like they're pressed. So I'm following the contours of the leaf here and curving all of my lines. Now, when you're doing this yourself, just use instinct on which direction you think the line should curve. And if it doesn't look right after you put it down, lift it up and try to curve it the other way and see if that's better. If it still doesn't look right, just leave it, because you might be overthinking it and it'll look fine later. But you can, again, lift out that color and change it as long as it's still wet. So use your instincts. You can look at reference photos as well, but if you want to start to become like an instinctual painter, then you have to practice using your instincts. And if it's wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't matter. And that's where painting in the sketchbook is great, because it's low pressure. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It's a sketchbook. It's supposed to be where you play and practice and learn things. So now here I did go ahead and go back next to that leaf that I was letting dry, and I'm painting this leaf. This is a good spot where you can see how I'm painting around that leaf that I was messing with for a while, because I want that leaf, the smaller one, to be on top. And so I'm painting around that edge so that that's a hard edge where that top leaf is covering the bottom leaf. And then that petal or that leaf that I'm painting is wet, so then all of the rest of it's bleeding out. And that's what I'm using on this painting to create layering. I'm using those hard edges in contrast to the soft edges within the leaves. Now, you could definitely use shadows to create depth. Typically, you would. And I talk a lot on my channel about using shadows to create depth and interest and high contrast, and it is helpful. But in this painting, I chose not to do it because I liked the way the leaves looked without shadows on them. And so I'm using different techniques of layering to create and push that depth rather than adding shadows to the leaves. And that was just a personal choice. Again, you could definitely add shadows if you're painting this composition and you really want to add shadows, do it. It's going to look good. I just chose not to. So as I go on, you'll actually see that I add leaves to the center, and I actually use lighter values and lower contrast to make them feel like they're in the background. So in reality, those leaves that are in the center and underneath the painting would be shaded. They would all be in shadow. But I decided that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to apply the principle of atmospheric perspective that we use in landscape paintings to this painting, even though it's not deep enough. I mean, it's a still life. It's just a little tiny potted plant. It's not deep enough to actually let atmospheric perspective truly play a role, but that's, again, the point of art. It's not a photograph. You get to play with techniques, and so I decided to use that to push the depth of the painting, and I think it was effective. Could I have done the opposite and made those leaves shadowed? Absolutely, but I chose not to, and I think that it was effective. Now, in terms of these leaves on the bottom, I'm adding more yellow, again, just to brighten them up a little bit, make them look newer. And then I add in more of the purple to make some of them just a little bit darker purple and a little bit more purple heavy on the leaves, just to create variety and everything. So don't be afraid to add different colors in, even if you don't see it in your painting, you can add different colors. And then here, I'm actually lifting away color. So lifting can be kind of a corrective technique, but it can also reveal different things. So if I lift off the darker value, it doesn't remove all of one color, right? It's gonna remove some of both colors that you mix there, and it might reveal something underneath that you like. So you can use lifting for that as well, and to add a little bit more transparency in. So something to think about and play with that technique. It's going to work better on different papers too. So knowing your paper composition and type and all of that, whether it's cotton or not, even different brands of paper, different cotton papers, even if it's 100% cotton, are going to react different. So just things to think about. So now as I go in and add in these leaves that are underneath, I am using a slightly more bluey green and a lighter value, and I'm getting that in nice and wet. So there's lots of water here, and then I'm tapping in some of the purple right away. So here, instead of doing the pink with tapping in the green, I'm doing the green and tapping in the purple. And so these are going to be a little bit more green heavy overall, though I do add just one random straight up pink leaf down here, but they're a little bit greener overall, but they're not high contrast. Everything's wet on wet. I don't go in and add more details to them. I am drawing in stems. Again, these stems are not going to be showing later. I could have left it and made them showing, but I chose not to. But that gives me structure for these clusters underneath to make sure that I'm pulling them all back to a central point. So that is something with these loose, like natural compositions for leaf placement. You want to make sure they're all pulling back to a central stem point. Even if you don't draw the stem, imagine a stem and make sure your leaves are pulling back to them in some way. Now, for this leaf here, this is the only kind of background leaf that I cared about, which sounds weird, but I wanted to make it look like it was folded. So I painted a little triangle and then did a line and then did kind of a fat oval. And just that shape right there made it look like a folded leaf. So again, here, I did not worry about trying to add shadow to this leaf, where in reality that like little triangle part would be more in shadow because of how the fold is covering it. But I didn't worry about it because the shape itself was doing the work. I didn't have to add shadow to make it read like a folded leaf. So I am adding in my greens, my pinks to get that variegation. Again, it's all wet on wet because I don't want it to be super detailed, but I don't add like a formal shadow to it. So once I get that leaf kind of finished adding in the variegation in color, I decided that I wanted to add a little bit more to the whole plant. And so I add some little stems here and there, little squiggly areas, just to get a little bit more fullness to it. I'm adding the stems to the center. Again, you're not going to see those later, but I add some to the edges as well to get that fullness and then to look like the plant is still growing. So I'm putting in the stems and then I'm adding some, again, of those kind of unfurled leaves in just really light values. And you'll see that overall, this painting is pretty heavy. It's not got your like light airiness of a typical watercolor painting. Just the way that the colors are blending and bleeding, it's pretty muted and it's not light and airy. But adding in these little stems and some of these light value leaves pulls in just a touch of the contrast in value. So I don't have a lot of light values yet, so I add some of that in. And then I add a little bit more dark value later as well, just to get that range in. So I have a range of colors, but I need a range of values as well. So just using a ton of water and adding in, again, just drawing in with the tip of my brush to get these little shapes for some leaves that are still closed up. And I just wanted to keep these really minimal. Now this leaf right here, this little cluster of leaves is my favorite because it really looks layered. So on the right side, you have the 4 leaves and it looks like they're kind of stacked on top of each other. And then by adding that extra little leaf that's not open yet at the top, it looks like it's that 5th one kind of sticking out the top of this little cluster. And the Wandering Jew plant, it has that a lot, where it's like these clusters where it's like 5 and it's bigger and then smaller and then one little one out the top. So I really like that one. But I also really like the bottom kind of sprig that's flowing out of the pot because it looks a little bit wild and uncontrolled, which is kind of cool. So then I looked at it for a little while and was considering leaving it like this. But then I decided that I wanted to add a pot to it because I felt like I wanted to go ahead and ground it, because right now it looks like the leaves are just kind of floating out of nowhere. I did look at this for a little while and consider my options because I didn't have to, but I decided I wanted to. Now you can see that there's not a lot of water in this mixture. You can see my whole table's shaking when I'm mixing that because there isn't very much water and the paintbrush is actually like gripping the palette. So this is just a very thick color. It's not going to bleed out into anything and it's going to stay right where I put it. And I decide to go ahead and draw in that circle of this like terracotta color to make the pot. Now I'm doing it in between the leaves and kind of tucking it in there. And it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. It's gonna read circle. It doesn't matter too much if it's perfect or not. So I'm just kind of tucking that in. And then I mix up a dark color for my soil. So I definitely could have mixed the colors that I used in the painting to create this dark color, but I honestly just didn't feel like it. Some people don't like having darks like grays and browns in their palette. I don't mind. You can see I have quite a few. So I'm using burnt umber, burnt sienna, sepia, Payne's gray. I'm just mixing up my browns and grays to create this dark color. You could definitely mix your primary colors to create a dark color as well, but I chose not to for this one. And I'm just gonna tap that color in between the leaves. So basically, after I painted the pot, I decided, well, that looks kind of weird because then the inside of the pot is white and there would definitely be soil. So I'm just tapping in kind of that soil color. I'm not too worried about creating any variety because, again, in my brain, this is a background element. It doesn't need detail. You could definitely add in a lot of detail in the soil if you wanted to, because soil is very rich. It has a lot of variety in it usually. So you can go to town with this if you want. I didn't want to. So I basically just did a flat, dark color for my soil and tapped that in around the leaves. I wanted to make sure I didn't do too much because I didn't want that darkest value to pull away from the leaves, because the leaves are really the interest in this painting for me. So I'm using this dark color judiciously and just filling in the white space inside the pot with that color. And that's kind of the technique I decided. I do go over it with a second layer because it just looked kind of dull and muted. So I wanted it to be dark, but not crazy, crazy dark, but I also didn't want it to look dull. So that's why I went ahead and added that second layer. And then again, I'm just painting around those leaves using negative painting basically to etch out the shape, make sure the shape of the leaves is still readable there. And this is, again, where like all of the stems that I had painted in the background are covered. You can only see basically that one for the bottom sprig that's spilling out of the pot. But the stems were still there for my brain for structure, so it's fine. And that's pretty much it. So, I mean, if you're gonna make this painting yourself, you can definitely follow the steps that I did. You can make whatever adjustments you want. You could stop at just the 3 clusters and connect them with the stems. That looked super cool. You can use different colors. I mean, I tried to stay fairly consistent with what the plant actually looks like, but you could go wild, use whatever colors you want in this. It doesn't matter. It's your painting, right? And then again, you can add shadows, you can focus on different elements. I think that making the background a little bit more faded out, lighter value really does push the focus to those top leaves that are darker values and more detailed. And so I like it, but it could definitely work the opposite way as well. And then the brightness of those top leaves would create the interest and focal point. So again, it's your painting, it's your art. You get to do with it what you want. And I highly recommend that you give this one a try. This is a fun plant to paint. Again, its informal name is called the Wandering Jew. So you could just search for reference photos of that, or you can use the reference photo that I used. Or go get yourself some Wandering Jew. It grows super easy. It's the easiest plant ever. It just lives. It will freeze if you leave it outside, so bring it in for freezes or cover it, but super easy plant to grow. And very, very fun to paint. So definitely recommend giving it a shot, either in your sketchbook or if you like florals and foliage, you could definitely paint this and hang this on your wall. It's very colorful and pretty and really not hard to paint. You get to play. It's just playing, so that's really fun. At this point, I tend to just keep touching the painting, even if it doesn't change anything. I mean, the last 30 seconds, all of the times that I've touched it, I don't think it really has changed anything. I do add one more leaf on the bottom, but so I kind of keep messing with it for a while after I think it's done, which I probably should just step away, but it's fine.
All right, so here is that completed painting, and I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. So this was just playing around in my sketchbook, but this is definitely a fun one to paint. So give it a shot. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep your paints flowing.